All right, we are on section 6. This is the last section of this unit. Woohoo, we're almost finished. So this is on reflection and distance, looking at the coordinate plane. So go ahead and make sure you have your notes. We're going to talk distance first. This is not on your notes until the end, but just look at this for a little bit. We're going to look at distance. So if I give you distance on the coordinate plane, really it's pretty an easy concept. All you need to do is to count. So if I want you to find the distance between D and C, all you simply need to do is to count. So you count. This is 1, 2, 3. So this is 3 units. They are 3 units apart. If I look at the distance between these two, I simply count. Go from here to here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is 5 units. The biggest mistake you can do is counting this one, starting where you are. Don't count this as 1. You go from here to here, and that's 1, okay? All right, go ahead and look at these next two. Why don't you count to yourself and see if you can figure out if we can come up with the same distance. So from D to C, what's the distance? Okay, hopefully you saw 4 units. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, what did you get from A to B? Hopefully you got 5 units. Oops, if I could spell it right. 5 units, because that is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so that's distance. We're going to come back to that in the end of the unit, but let's move on to a reflection right now. All right, reflections. Now this is on your notes, so this is where we'll pick up your notes. You have the definition here for reflection. You're going to need to write this down. Reflection, a figure that has been flipped, reflection and flipped are kind of the same word, that has been flipped over the X or Y axis to produce a congruent mirror image. Congruent means the exact same. The only hard part about reflection here is that you need to know the X and the Y axis, because I'm going to tell you I'm flipping something over the X or the Y axis, and you need to know the difference. So this is what I mean. If you look at this, obviously these are a mirror image. It's been flipped over. So if I went from here to here, I flipped over the X or the Y axis. Which one? Hopefully you saw it. I flipped it over the Y axis. Let's look at this figure. Did I flip it over the X or the Y axis? I flipped it over the X axis. Okay, so that's the most important thing that you need to know is the X and the Y axis, which we talked a lot about last section. So pause the video and write down your definition for reflection. All right, now let's do a couple of examples here. I've got a coordinate grid with some locations, and I want you to tell me what building is its reflection. So if you look at this, what building is located at the post office's reflection across the y-axis? So you need to look at 2 critical things. I'm looking at the post office, and it's reflecting over the y-axis. So remember, this is my y, this is my x, okay? So I got to find the post office. Here's my post office, and it is being reflected over the x-axis or the y-axis. So the y-axis, my airliner keeps messing up here, guys. So the y-axis, and it's being reflected, so that must be the home. Okay. The next one, what building is located at the bus stops? So the bus stops reflection across the x-axis, So bus stop and the x-axis. So here's my bus stop. Whoa. And I'm being reflected over the x-axis. Okay, x-axis. So, sorry guys, my airliner's having some issues here. So this is my x-axis, so I'm being reflected over. So from here, that must be the gas station. Gas station. All right. And then the next one, trying to move this over. All right, so the mall is reflected across the y-axis of what building? So I'm looking at the mall, and it's reflecting over the y. So the mall, here's my mall, and it's being reflected over the y-axis. Remember, this is my y-axis, so I'm reflecting it over, so that means I must be going To the school. I must be going to the school. Okay? All right, so that was on your notes, so make sure you wrote that down. And then I want you to move to the next one. Why don't you do this one, do these 3 problems, pause the video, and come back for the answers. All right, go ahead and check your answers. See if your locations are correct. If you've got different locations, then that probably means you looked at the reflection over the wrong axis. Okay, so check that out. All right, let's do a couple more. All right, so again, we're going to look at reflections. So what letter is located at A's reflection over the y-axis? So I'm looking at A, and I'm reflecting over the y. So let's label these. This is my y, this is my x-axis. So A is reflecting over the y, so that means it must be C. And what letter, let me erase that. What letter is located at F's reflection over the x-axis? So F, and I'm reflecting over X, so that must be C. And then I want you to draw line segments connecting points A, C, E, and F, and tell me what shape is formed. All right, you do it and I will do it. It's hard for me to do it, but hopefully yours will look better than mine. So A, C, I should have gone. This actually, guys, this one should say A C F E. It should say that so that it makes a complete shape. Otherwise, it would be a little bit different. All right. So what shape is that formed? That is a rectangle. Okay. All right. So that was on your notes too. So make sure you wrote that down. All right. All right, you go ahead and do these 3 problems, and let me make sure that this is, yep, this is in the right order for this one. All right, do these 3, come back and check your answers. Pause the video. All right, check your answers. Hopefully you knew that this was a trapezoid. If you have questions with plotting the points or with locating the reflections, please ask me questions, all right? All right, so again on your notes, this is on your notes still. Remember we talked about opposites in a previous unit. So if I'm looking at, I want you to find the opposite point of A over the y-axis, okay? So you know that the opposite is the exact same thing. It is just it is the same distance from 0. It's the same distance. So in this case, since I'm looking at the y-axis, this is the y-axis, it would be the same distance from the y-axis. So if you see this, this is 1, 2, 3, 4 away from the y-axis. So its opposite must also be 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is the point. So that would be at 4, 3. Okay, did you understand that one? So let's just say in particular, let me make up one. Let's say I have, this is my point B, okay? What would be its opposite over the x-axis? This is the x-axis, okay? So 1, 2, so it would have to be 1, 2 over this one. That would be its opposite, okay? Do you understand that, the opposites? All right. All right, this one is not on your notes because you're going to do an example in a second. What would be the coordinates of the same rectangle, and I think I missed it over here, over the x-axis, reflected over the x-axis? I'll write that. Over the x-axis. Okay? All right, so let's look at this. So this one would be, if you look from point, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and plot these points. So if you look at this point here, this one had to be 1, 2 from the x-axis. So 1, 2, so that has to be this one. And this point was 1, 2, 3, 4 points away from it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And then if you notice across, they are 1, 2, 3. So this is 1, 2, 3. So again, this is 2 from the x-axis. This is 2 from the x-axis. This one was 4, so it has to be here. So that is my, oops, wow, sorry guys. That is my shape reflected across the x-axis. So this would be 2, 2. This would be 2, 4. This would be 5, 2. And this would be 5, 4. Okay? All right, so you have the next one. I want you to go ahead. I think I've given you directions on that one. What would be the coordinates of the same rectangle if it has been reflected over the y-axis? So not only do I want you to draw it, but I want you to write down the coordinates. Okay? So go ahead and do that. Pause the video and come back for your answer. All right, check your answers. So my coordinates would be 4, 5, 6, 5, 6, 2, and 4, 2. Okay, that would be my reflection over the y-axis. All right, so one more thing. Remember I talked to you at the very beginning that we would come back to distance. So if you look, this was the first one we had for distance. So if you look, we found the distance between those 2 points. All right. My question to you is, if given 2 points, 2 coordinates, 2 ordered pairs, would you be able to find the distance between them without graphing them? All right, so if you look at this one, from D to C, there were 4 units apart. Well, let's look at the coordinates. So my coordinates were -5, 1, -1, 1. Do you see, remember, do you see any difference there between those points? Do you recognize that the y values were the same? Oh, sorry, my points are a little bit off there. Do you notice how the y coordinates are the same? So the only difference in coordinates is the x coordinate. And do you realize that the difference between a -5 and -1 is 4? Let's look over here. So here are my 2 ordered pairs, 3, 3, and 3, -2. Again, which one is the same? Do you notice the x value is the same? So really all I'm looking at is the difference between 3 and -2. So here's where you have that problem when you deal with negatives. We talked about that in a previous unit. If I'm looking at the distance between 3 and -2, remember I'm going from a +3 down to -2. So that is 5 units. Because from 3 to 0 is 3, and then from 0 to -2 is another 2. Okay? That's like that absolute value, the difference between those. Okay? All right, so what I want you to see is if you can find the distance between those 2 ordered pairs without plotting the points. All right, so I'll do the first one with you. So if I have 1, 6 and 1, 8, what's the difference between those 2 coordinates? Well, my x values are the exact same. So all I need to know is the distance between 6 and 8. Well, obviously that's just 2 units. Okay? Let's look at the next one. I've got 5, -3, -2, -3. All right, well, my y values are the same, so I'm just looking at my x values. I've got a positive and a negative. So actually, guys, it helps me if I see a number line. So remember, I'm just looking at the difference between 5 and -2. So if I'm at 5 and I go all the way down to -2, that went down 5 and then 2 more, so that is 7 units. All right, you try those 2, pause the video, and let's check your answers. All right, check those 2 answers there. All right, if you have any questions with any of this unit, I know this was a long video. If you have any questions, please make sure and ask. All right, your exit slip, you've got room there on your notes. You are writing the coordinates, the ordered pairs for each one of these. Find the distance between each of those points. And then you have 2, I think you have 3 actually. I think 7's been cut off, so that's okay. Just do 5 and 6. You can cross off 7. Find the distance without using the coordinate plane. All right, Have a great day.